webinar series for 2025. For those that aren't familiar with us and joining for the first time, SlashData is a market research firm active in the technology community for nearly 20 years. We serve the technology community, helping companies make data-backed, high-impact decisions with confidence. We help you understand your customers, your users, your decision makers, and understand how to do everything from product design and marketing strategies. We will continue this series throughout the year, so do stay tuned. Join our newsletter to get invited to the next ones. Before I hand off to our featured speaker, I'm not going to take too much of your time, but a bit of housekeeping. We will be open for questions at the end of the presentation. The live chat that you see available on your right hand, you could type in your questions and we'll pick them up and address them to our speaker. So, without further ado, we have our Director of Research here today, Kostas Korakitis. He will end the long-winded debate on software developer populations. There has been a ton of discussion on the number of developers and whether that's declining over the last couple years and even faster day after day. With the introduction of the mass wave of AI-assisted coding tools, this has become a big issue. So we want to talk about it as well and end that debate. And I don't think we need anything else, and I'll hand it over to Costa. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank
See
you.
you later.
Thank you, Masula, and hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on global developer population trends. As Masula said, I'm Kostas Korakitis, Director of Research at SlashData, and in the next half an hour or so, we are going to explore how the global developer population has evolved over the past 3 years. So what's driving this growth, where it's happening, and how it's changing its in composition, focus, and geography. Um, Let me first quickly walk you through what we will cover today. So I'll start with a brief description of our developer population sizing methodology, essentially how we derive the population estimates that I will present today. And then we'll look at how the developer population has grown over the past 3 years and how the balance between professionals and amateur developers has shifted in this period. We'll then talk about, we'll present several breakdowns of the global developer population by some very important dimensions, like by region, by types of software development projects, programming language communities, industry verticals, and company size. All right, so first on our population sizing methodology, how we arrive at our estimates, how we calculate the number of active software developers globally. So for this we're using our own independent bottom-up methodology that's firmly rooted in reliable measurement through our global developer surveys. So we're not just using available third-party population estimates, we derive our own estimates independently. Our methodology is based on two main pillars. So first, we make use of reliable sources of numbers of developers or direct indicators of their activity. And these include a number of GitHub accounts, number of Stack Overflow accounts, and employment statistics from the USA and the European Union. But also, and the second pillar is our global developer survey data, where we actually measure directly the developer activity. So far, we've run 29 survey waves of this large survey, and in each of these surveys, we reach more than 10,000 developers globally. So we combine these two main, let's say, sources to derive our estimates. And one important point is that we avoid as much as possible to make assumptions about similarities in between geographies and subsets and other subsets of the developer population. For example, we make use of employment statistics from the European Union and the USA, but we just don't extrapolate it to other regions. We always rely on our measurements through our surveys about the geographic distributions of developers to estimate the number of developers by region. And with that, let's begin with arguably one of the most interesting and important questions: how many developers are there globally? So, according to our data and according to our estimates, as of the beginning of this year, we estimate a global developer population at just over 47 million. That's a really striking increase of about 50% from the Q1 of 2022, when this number was at just over 31 million. Now, such a growth would be quite impressive in any sector, but really for developers, this shows how pervasive software development has become in shaping the global economy. But while the 3-year growth curve looks impressive, it's more revealing how the growth rates have changed over time. Between 2022 and 2023, we saw an increase of 15%. Then the next year, from 2023 to 2024, there was a sharp spike, 21% in just 1 year. And this was likely fueled by post-pandemic investments, startup funding booms, and surging demand for digital services. However, in the last 12 months, this growth rate has decelerated to just 10%. Now, this slowdown may be the beginning of a new phase, potentially a plateau of some sort. We could be entering a period of extended maturation of the developer ecosystem, and saturation in mature markets, a cooling global economy, or diminishing returns on digital investments could all be contributors to this. Now, this doesn't really mean that the developer economy is necessarily in decline, but it does suggest that we should really temper our expectations for continued exponential growth of the developer population. The immediate implication of this is that opportunities might shift from quantity to quality. That means how companies, software development tooling and development platform companies train, retain, and support developers will become more important than just how many developers entering the field. Okay, this slowing of growth becomes even more meaningful when we dig into who is driving this expansion, this growth in the developer population. What we see here is a clear divergence. So the professional segment is expanding, while the amateur segment has begun to contract. Between the beginning of 2022 and the beginning of 2025, the number of professional developers grew significantly by 70% from 21.8 million to 36.5. By contrast, the population of amateur developers only grew moderately and actually declined by over 1 million in the last year. So this is really a telling sign. Professional developers are staying in the field longer and growing in numbers, while the traditional feeder population appears to be declining, appears to be shrinking. And there are many forces at play here. So first of all, it's clear that in the past decade or so that software development has become a stable career path. More people more people are going to university or boot camps with the express goal of becoming software developers. And this shift means that more individuals are building long-term careers around it. At the same time, there's also a shift, a cultural shift in how development is perceived. Now, coding is not so much about exploration anymore, but uh, but it's more associated with work, startups, and monetization. And also, younger audiences have now many more ways of expressing their creativity, for example, through game modes or design tools, than just simply with coding. Um, Now, this shift can pose a risk in the long-term pipeline. So, with fewer people entering, exploring programming, the talent funnel can become smaller. If we see fewer amateurs testing the waters today, we may see fewer professionals entering the field tomorrow. So while the professional population is growing now, the declining engagement at the entry level is sort of a red flag. So it suggests that unless companies invest in developer education to make the entry points more accessible, we may face stagnation or even decline in future years. And this brings us to another related trend, which is the aging of the developer population. Um, in the beginning of 2022, developers aged 18 to 24 made up close to a third of the global population, and by the beginning of 2025, they only this segment only represents the 23%. That's a drop of 8 percentage points over 3 years, which is a significant one. Meanwhile, the share of developers aged 35 to 44 has steadily climbed from 22% to 26%. So the overall picture is clear. Fewer younger, fewer young people are entering development, and more experienced developers are staying in the field. We're seeing a population that's aging gradually, growing more seasoned and also professionalized, as we saw before. Um, Now, there are both benefits and challenges here. On the positive side, this means we have a developer workforce with deeper experience and more institutional knowledge and potentially more stable career paths. And these are people now leading teams, driving architectural decisions, and mentoring others. But the concern is again about how sustainable the future pipeline is. So if the entry level population continues to shrink, and if younger developers are not coming at the pace needed to replace retirements and transitions, we may face long-term shortages. This also has implications for companies offering developer tools and platforms. So as the average developer grows older and more experienced, their learning and tooling preferences change and evolve. And there's less focus on quick experimentation and more on robust and reliable tooling and long-term support. Also, good high quality documentation, as our research has shown over time. So companies that want to stay close to this evolving community need to account for these shifts in priorities and preferences. Now, when we look at how developers are distributed geographically, we see a rich and evolving map of the global developer population. Western regions, Western Europe and North America remain really the largest communities with about 9.5 million developers each. And these markets have long been the center of software innovation, and they continue to be deeply influential, and really they are very big contributors to the global developer population growth. But there's growth happening in other regions too, and these regions are really worth taking a look at. For example, South Asia has grown from has nearly doubled in size from 4 million developers in 2022 to 7.5 million developers today. This surge is largely driven by India's massive and increasingly sophisticated tech workforce. The region really combines young and dynamic workforce, strong STEM education, and a growing ecosystem of startups and tech giants. Also, Greater China. Greater China is a region which has seen explosive growth over the past few years. It has nearly tripled in size since 2022, from 2.4 to 5.8 million developers. And this is evidence that China's investment in local developer education, homegrown platforms, and government-backed initiatives, all these are really paying off. Then there's also South America, as we see here, which has grown from 1.7 million developers to 3.4 in 3 years. This is sort of a quieter, let's say, growth or evolution, but also an important one. As countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia are emerging as tech outsourcing hubs, with a very strong local demand for industries like fintech and mobile solutions. So the takeaway is quite clear. The center of gravity is gradually shifting. While Western markets remain dominant in size, the fastest growth and most dynamic momentum are coming from Asia and Latin America. Now, let's turn our attention and focus to what developers are actually working on, so the types of projects that they're involved in. First of all, okay, it's perhaps unsurprising that the most popular application area is web. So over 23 million developers are working on front-end and back-end applications, and right behind them are backend services and data science and ML AI applications. However, what's perhaps a bit more interesting is than the top sectors, than the most popular sectors, are the ones that are rising fast and declining. So let's talk about the fast risers first. Here we see that the development of applications and extensions for third-party ecosystems has seen a staggering growth since 2022. So this sector includes things like extensions for commerce platforms like Shopify, extensions for IDEs, browser add-ons, and so on. Developers are really finding value in building on top of existing platforms where user bases are already established, and this is really a model that offers distribution, monetization, and low go-to-market friction. Another fast-growing area is embedded software, where the population involved in these types of projects has more than doubled since 2022. This growth really reflects the rise of connected devices, automotive systems, and custom hardware. We see from consumer electronics to industrial sensors, embedded development is moving to mainstream. Now, the flip side is some projects that we've seen a decline. So, for example, mobile app development has slipped, dropping slightly in the last year. So, previous years the growth was the growth was modest, but in the last year we've seen a decline. So this might be due to market saturation and app store consolidation, or even the rising costs of user acquisition. And similarly, desktop apps, we see a similar decline of the number of developers involved in these types of projects in the last year, which which reflects the long term that we see moving away from native desktop software applications and in favor of web-based or cross-platform solutions. This and the message here is that developer developer interest, although it's still strong for let's say the more traditional application areas, it's slowly moving towards other paradigms and towards niche and high impact domains, especially those offering integration, automation, and platform or ecosystem leverage. Now, another question we get all the time is or a request is to size specific language communities. And here's what we see here. JavaScript continues to hold the top spot in terms of number of users with 20 to 28 million users at a healthy growth over the last 3 years. Java and Python are in the top three for a while now. Both also seeing quite steady and healthy growth since 2022, and now they both have around 23 million users. These languages have really wide applicability, strong communities, and very mature ecosystems. Now, if we now focus on growth rates, and we see that we have some interesting findings. For example, here we see that Rust stands out as the fastest growing of the major languages. So that is language communities with over 5 million users, with more than doubling in size since 2022. That growth is really driven by Rust's focus on safety, performance, and concurrency, and it's becoming nowadays becoming the go-to choice of systems programming, embedded development, and blockchain infrastructure. C++ is another case of a very fast-growing language. C++ is often seen or considered a legacy language, but this doesn't mean that it doesn't continue to grow and doesn't continue to be relevant. It has climbed from 9.4 million developers in 2022 to 16.3 in 2025. This reflects its continued relevance in high-performance applications, gaming, and modern embedded systems, where performance and efficiency matter. So the key takeaway is that developer preferences are really diversifying. So it's not just about picking the most popular language. It's also about choosing the right tool for the right job. And we also see this because developers don't just use one language, but they tend to use multiple languages at the same time, depending on the project they work on. Okay, moving our attention to the industry verticals that developers who work are active in or work in. We see that software products and services is by far the largest vertical, with nearly 14 million developers. That's of course to be expected, as it's the core of the tech ecosystem, of the tech economy. But looking beyond this top vertical, we see some some very important growth rates in other verticals too. For example, manufacturing has nearly doubled its developer population in just 3 years, from just over 2 million developers to nearly 4 in 2025. This is largely being driven by Industry 4.0, where connected factories, automation, and robotics are making software a central pillar of production. Telecommunication and networks have also seen strong growth. So as telcos continue to embrace 5G, edge computing, and software-defined infrastructure, they're hiring developers to manage increasingly complex software systems. And also data analytics and BI. This is another fast riser. For, the population has grown. The population of people employed in this industry has grown from 4 million to 5.8 in 3 years. And as every company becomes slowly a data company, the demand for people who can extract insights from data continues to rise. So in short, software is no longer confined in the tech sector. Every industry is becoming digital, is becoming software driven, and every digital strategy needs developers to bring in life. Finally, let's look at where developers are working. What we find is that medium-sized businesses, those with 51 to 1,000 employees, are the fastest growing employers of developers. This group has expanded to 14.5 million developers in the beginning of 2025. Large enterprises are also continue to grow, employing 7.5 million developers today. Together, these two segments account for over 60% of all professional developers globally. Small businesses and freelancers have remained relatively stable, and this might point to consolidation in the industry, and also higher costs for independent developers or more structured employment paths. So what this tells us is that innovation is no longer just the domain of startups or the giants. Mid-sized businesses are now innovation hubs, really, and they're growing fast. They're hiring aggressively and often have the flexibility to explore new technologies without the red tape of enterprise environments. So for companies building software tools and platforms, this middle tier represents sort of a sweet spot, because they're large enough to have impact. It's a large enough segment to have impact, but also nimble enough to adopt and scale quickly. Okay, and this brings me to the end of the presentation. We've covered a lot. We started from the explosive growth of the developer population to the more recent signs of potential slowdown and stagnation. We've seen how this growth is primarily driven by professionals, while the amateur segment is actually shrinking, and how the developer community is gradually becoming older as we go. We also looked at regional shifts, so where the growth is strongest in terms of regions. We saw how developers are expanding into new types of software development projects, how their language preferences are evolving over time. Industries, how some industries are growing fast, and also that medium-sized businesses are centers of innovation. So one of the main takeaways is that the developer economy is not just growing, but it's really transforming. The era of rapid expansion is is giving turn to maturity into a phase of consolidation, specialization, and deep integration with every facet of the industry and society. So understanding developers is really is more important and more critical than ever. It's understanding developers, what drives them, and things like where they work, types of projects they're involved in, and their technology choices. All these are very as important and as critical as ever. Thank you, and yeah, I'd love to open the floor for questions now.
Thank you so much, Costa, for that presentation. Indeed, it's extremely insightful, especially at this time. I do want to revert back to something as well. You gave it a clear view that there's still a bit of growth, but the growth is declining, but not necessarily the populations yet. We're not there. But is there any forecast as when that growth is estimated to stagnate? Because, I mean, our view is a bit different than what some are jumping in and talking about, that developer populations have been decreasing by the millions and whatnot. We don't see that in the data. The data does not show that from what we've dug into and what your team has done. But there is a slowdown. What do you see in the next years?
Yeah, indeed. This is something that people talk about, how the developer population is actually decreasing in size. However, this is not what we see, and what our estimates say in terms of the numbers. The slowdown is evident. We see a slowdown in the last year. So it's always hard to predict what will happen. But if the slowdown continues at the same rate as we've seen in the last 12 months, we may actually in a few years from now, 1 or 2 years from now, we may reach to a point where the population, the developer population, is not growing. Um, this doesn't mean necessarily that we will start seeing a decline, but a stagnation is a likely scenario.
Mhm. Thank you for that. And then I want to go back to the where you talk about programming languages. So programming languages and understanding the populations and the size of program language communities is probably the most popular study and data points that we look at and that we see our community looks at really regularly. You talked about Rust being the fastest growing. You lean into what's next, but I wanted to talk about again what's next. You have visual tools, you have C++, and how do you justify that?
Yeah, perhaps something that I didn't talk about in detail is actually visual tools, which is one is where we see um, really fast growth in the last 3 years. So these tools have grown from in 2022 they had 5 million users, and now beginning of this year we're close to 9 million. This is also very fast, very impressive growth, and this is actually this is proof that the people are increasingly using tools like no code, low code platforms, uh, and more than anything, this really expands the definition of who a developer is. In our survey, we use the term developer anyway in a broad term. So what we mean by developer is anyone involved in software development projects in any way or capacity. And what we see here is that the number of people who do this, not actually coding, but using perhaps no-code tools, visual tools, this is increasing, and this is actually a proof that more non-traditional coders are now empowered to build business applications, for example, to automate their tasks and to contribute to digital workflows. So yeah, this is a real shift. This is something that we've been hearing about the use of no-code tools, but yeah, this is proof that this is actually happening.
Mm, really, really interesting, impactful, and I think this is extremely useful information. I think our audience will believe so too. Super helpful validating some of those numbers for us. Okay, then I don't see any other questions today, and we can call it a day here. Close up the webinar for today. We do hope you all got a ton out of it, and of course, these will be available as a recording. You'll be able to get access to them even off this live session after the live session. And yeah, join our newsletter and do join and keep up to date with the new webinars that we'll be running. We've got a couple really exciting ones with some partners of ours as well. We're going to have that you'll find out more as what those webinars are going to be talking about, but really interesting stuff. Thank you all, and have a great day. Bye for now.
Thank you.